Thank you so much for everybody for finding the time to come on to our webinar to learn a bit more about EdReports, our ELA inaugural review and review results, and how you might be able to use these results in your school district or state. You can see from the agenda here, it is ambitious, but hopefully we will have some time at the end for questions and answers. If you do have a question, feel free to type it in the box, hopefully to your lower right, if my WebEx skills are up to snuff. And that way we will try to get to those at the end. If not, we will provide an email at the end of the webinar and get back to you as soon as possible. After a quick introduction about our organization and what we hope to accomplish, we'll spend some time walking through our ELA reports, but also spend some time on our review tools and really sharing the key areas we were looking at that are driven primarily by classroom educators. We'll talk about using the report, share a little bit more about what's on the horizon for us in terms of additional ELA reviews, and let you know how you can get involved with us. I am Eric Hirsch. I'm the Executive Director of EdReports, and for our webinar is Lisa Potts, our Director of ELA Reviews here at EdReports. Dr. Molly Branson-Thayer, Director of the Washington P3 Executive Leadership Institute at the University of Washington. Morgan Dunton, ELA Specialist with the Maine Department of Education. Maya Lars, a Reading Specialist for Prince George's County Public Schools and one of our fantastic devoted educator reviewers who are so giving of their time, as is Stephen Helton, recently retired, and so Stephen, we just anticipate more and more time from you as we go on. So EdReports launched in March 2015 with our inaugural reviews in K-8 math. And we launched based in part on what you can see here that was published in the CCSSO K-8 Publishers Criteria. Publishers and purchasers are equally responsible for a healthy materials market. Publishers cannot deliver focus to buyers who only ever complain about what has been left out, yet never complain about what is crept in. More generally, publishers cannot invest in quality if the market doesn't demand it of them, nor reward them for producing it. We work collaboratively with publishers here at EdReports and know how much time they put in to creating materials for educators. And we spent a lot of time thinking about that value proposition with the market itself. And is there sufficient information out there to really help the market demand high quality, standards aligned, usable materials so that students can learn and teachers can thrive? So you can see here our theory of action at EdReports. What we hope to do and hope we are doing is identify excellence, really send a signal to the field about the materials that meet our educator-created and research-based criteria as to what it means to be aligned with college and career-ready standards and the instructional shifts necessary to make those standards come alive for kids. We, to date, have reviewed in math and ELA, and as I'll show in a minute, continue to do so. But we know identifying excellence isn't enough on its own unless folks are aware of these reports and utilize them in an adoption process. The market really won't be clear and send that signal about what's needed for teachers. So by identifying excellence and increasing demand for excellence, we hope all materials will improve and ultimately we'll get better outcomes for students. We feel really comfortable about that connection between improving materials and student learning based on research that's out there. Instructional materials can have as large an impact on student outcomes as teaching quality. We know that there is wide variation in alignment and quality of materials, and while there is on price, that those two things may or may not be related. And we were certainly interested in a recent study done by the Center for American Progress, which showed the average cost-effectiveness ratio of switching to higher quality curriculum was almost 40 times that of reducing class size. We know if we get teachers the right materials that really help students understand college and career-ready standards, that we will be doing our job. And we know this is essential because the marketplace just hasn't had the full set of information. Many publishers are claiming alignment to the standards, but we see that despite these claims that a majority of districts, a large majority of districts nationwide, still report finding Common Core aligned materials to be a challenge. And only 4 out of 10 teachers nationwide, as we were doing a listening tour starting EdReports in 2015, reported that the instructional materials they have in their classroom are aligned with the Common Core. So we hope with great educators from across the country coming up with the criteria we review against and spending numerous hours, as Maya and Stephen will share with you, that we can provide that information to schools, districts, and states, empowering them to make instructional purchasing decisions that will save them time and help them really ensure teachers have what they need to be successful. Since 2015, we put out our inaugural ELA reports across 7 series at 22 grade levels. We have up 138 K-8 math reports and 5 3-course sequenced high school math reports. As we'll show you on the website a little bit later, with materials under review, many more to come. In doing so, we've trained 200+ educators from across the country who know the Common Core, and we've been excited to help them learn how to see if those standards are in instructional materials from diverse districts from across the country, at 46 states and DC and counting. With that, why don't I turn it over to you, Lisa, to take over and talk about our ELA process and bring in Molly, Maya, and others.
Wonderful. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Great. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'm Lisa Potts. I am the ELA Reviews Director at EdReports. And I come to EdReports from, I was a classroom teacher for 10 years. I taught middle school and high school. And then most recently, I came to EdReports from the State Department of Ed here in Washington State, where I was the Language Arts Director. And one of the things that was a consistent call, a consistent need in our state was people were always looking for really strong, high-quality materials. What's the best thing I can use? I need some support. And that really brought me into this work. So I'm very excited to be sharing this work with you. And as Eric mentioned, when we get to the end of the webinar, if there's any way you'd like to lean in or collaborate or work with us, this work is really dependent on the passion and expertise of all of the educators across the country. So go ahead to the next slide. Our ELA process began about a year ago in action. The educators created the draft review tool last fall, and what they did to do that was we had this massive listening tour. We listened to experts, educators all across the country, taking stock of what people say they need, what they need for their kids, what they need for teachers, what they need to really get kids across the finish line and to grow those literacy skills. We looked at other tools that are in play by colleagues and other groups, as well as different processes, to come up with our own methodology and the way that we created our criteria, which we'll show you in a bit. After we had this review tool, we selected our inaugural ELA review team members who created this amazing work out of this pretty big pool. And the review teams, the people on our review teams are educators from all across the country, and they're from all different walks of education. So we have classroom teachers, we have coaches, we have school administrators and district administrators, we have people who work as independent contractors and researchers, we have university people, teacher prep people. We really are dedicated to hitting that topography of what kids actually experience out in the world and the different stakeholders and people who are supporting them. Our review teams participated in the training on this tool and process before beginning reviews in early 2016, and that was for our first round. And later on, we'll show you where we are now. Our methodology, our review criteria, again, is based on that initial research and listening tour. So at EdReports, we have a gateway system, and what makes us unique in that is that we really dedicate our time to identifying the highest quality components up front at the beginning. So one thing that we heard loud and clear across the country that you see in Gateway 1 is that people really want to have the best texts to give their students. So they want to have the right texts that engage kids at the right reason. They should be at the right grade level and level of complexity, and they need to be organized in a way that teachers can access them and employ them in the class. And so our Gateway 1, part of that includes that look at the text quality and complexity. The other main thing that we heard loud and clear across the country was that people really needed to see alignment to the standards. We needed to know that if something is saying that it's a comprehensive program, then it really needs to have reading, writing, speaking and listening, and language support so that kids are engaging with those things. And that's a big shift for a lot of people, moving from a curriculum where they might have just reading or just writing, and now they're looking for something that has a lot of other components. So our first gateway hits at those two things. Also in our first gateway, we have a section for grades 3 through 5 that talk about foundational skills, where we're looking at the foundational skills as they're laid out. Once our reviewers go through a review with that first gateway, if materials meet or partially meet those criteria and they have a lot of high quality components in those areas, then we move into a Gateway 2 review. And in Gateway 2, we're looking at building knowledge with texts and tasks. We're looking at that deep academic vocabulary work that really accelerates kids' learning. And this is also in Gateway 2, we're looking for that integration that the Common Core has been supporting. So we're looking at texts and tasks and kids working with reading and writing at the same time. We're looking at great writing assessments and research projects that work together. And we're looking at cohesiveness of work so that children are having an accelerated experience over the course of the year that's engaging to them, but is also something that is measurable and valuable at the end of the year. So materials that meet or partially meet get reviewed in both of these gateways. And then if materials meet both of these gateways and we have a lot of evidence that they're hitting these criteria, then we do a third review, a Gateway 3 review, where we're looking at the instructional supports and those other usability indicators. We're looking at lesson plans, at outreach materials. This is the place where we might see alignment, other kinds of alignment documents. We might see some teacher prep work here. We might have some different kinds of technology access. And one of the things that makes us very unique is that we do it this way. In my former roles, we often started with Gateway 3, and we were looking for some of those instructional components first, or the support components first, like does it have access to computers? So that was first. But at EdReports, we really want to make sure that the core, the heart of what kids are doing, those texts and the tasks, those are the things that we have to start with. Because if you don't have strong text and you don't have aligned strategies, aligned tasks, aligned questions, aligned things for kids to do, then those instructional supports are really less relevant because you'll spend too much time having to go back and recreate or revise materials. So at this time, I'd like to pause a little bit and invite Dr. Molly Branson-Thayer to talk a little bit about how this work works with other national research and other kind of alignment criteria.
Hi, this is Molly Branson-Thayer. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, great. So I just want to start as I contextualize these gateways in the research on learning to read with a little overview. So what's going on in these gateways are really two different major components of literacy development. Each gateway contains both literacy content, but also looking across, you can find a progression and a continuum. And both of those aspects of reading development are really important to consider. So looking back over the context of what reading is and what it means to be a strong reader in 3rd through 8th grade, there is a major focus on comprehension. And so all the way back to the early 70s in research, there was a real lack of instruction in the area of comprehension in the school day. And that's a Dolores Durkin study. It's really a foundational study in reading development. And what she found was that under 12 minutes a day were spent on actually developing reading comprehension within students. And when you compare that to what the Common Core State Standards are asking right now, which is the ability to read increasingly complex text, draw evidence from them, and draw logical conclusions, and present that analysis in writing, you can see how there would be a major discrepancy. So after coming forward in the context of reading development and research is the RAND report, which was produced in 2002. And this was the RAND Reading Study Group. And it still stands as one of the foundational pieces that orient us to how best to teach reading and comprehension. And the Common Core State Standards relied heavily on it. And really what we're thinking about there is that reading is made up of the reader, the person who's doing the comprehending, the text, what is being comprehended, and the activity in which comprehension is a part of. And so those are three really important components, and you see them all represented here. So the other important piece to consider in grades 3 through 8 when you're looking at reading research is the 4th grade reading slump, which is after 3rd grade, most of the reading that happens, the children in the classrooms are responsible for on their own. Maybe they're assigned it for homework, or they're meant to read a chapter independently and then come prepared to talk about it. And so anyone that goes into 3rd or 4th grade struggling with reading falls further and further behind. Therefore, it's really important that curricular materials address this by offering grade level texts that are complex, so the text complexity, offering tasks that allow students and instructional opportunities that allow students to engage with the text, but then also build knowledge, which is that gateway number 2, and help students gain deeper knowledge about whatever it is that they're reading. So as Eric said initially, the curricular materials that are put in front of teachers and then delivered instructionally to students can ultimately really support the reader and the task with the text that they put there. So therefore, I think the way that the gateways progress illustrate this, that it starts with the text. In order to do rich comprehension work, a text needs to be high quality and complex enough. It needs to have visual diagrams. It needs to have all different kinds of writing. There need to be text in different genres, informational texts that deal with, even within informational, you need explanatory, you need research-based, so the text complexity and the quality and the genre all need to be addressed so that children actually have the opportunity to engage with material that they can do some intense comprehension around. So the text is the foundational piece and makes sense as Gateway 1. Then you move into Gateway 2, and Gateway 2 is really where we talk about building the knowledge of the reader, and this is has become increasingly important with Common Core State Standards because the definition of English language arts changed within the Common Core State Standards, and the title of the full title of ELA in the Common Core State Standards is Standards for English Language Arts and Literacy in History and Social Studies, Science, and Technical Subjects. So the specification of subject areas in the title of the ELA Common Core State Standards is a first indication that these standards are going to be different from general ELA and are going to include building knowledge, learning that needs to take place in social studies, science, and technical subjects. So it's really important that technical vocabulary is there, that the texts offer that there are knowledge building activities that support the student. And then finally, once we know that those two things exist, that you have these complex texts and you have this ability to help support the knowledge building within students, then you move on to how is the instruction designed to make all of this happen together. And I think that, again, when you go back to sort of the foundational research that undergirds what reading comprehension is and what we want our students to be able to know and do in terms of working with complex texts and tasks, it is the instruction and the task that is going to matter, ensuring that the students have the ability to dig in. I see that the slide was progressed, which may be my cue to stop talking about research. So I will I'll take a step back, and if there's any questions or chats, I'm sure they're going to the moderator, and I'm happy to get them and address them.
Thanks so much, Molly. That was fantastic. And also, as reviewers are doing that, one of the things that we do that's a little different than a lot of review processes is we really are looking at the whole year's work. And so, as Molly was talking about, there are different components that we need children to be engaging with. We're really looking to see that those components are being employed across each week, each quarter, each year, and not done out in isolation. So I really appreciate you underscoring some of those things. The review teams who do this work themselves, the composition of them, again, they come from all walks of education across the United States. These are folks who are highly proficient experts in their content area and experts at teaching, working with children. Each review team has 3 to 4 content review team members, and in there's one person who acts as the lead facilitator for that group. We have calibrators who are reviewers who work across the review teams to ensure that quality standards are being implemented throughout. And they're also act a little bit as our research runners. They look to see, are we articulating things the same way, just like Molly was talking about that inclusion of cross-content work. Are we talking about the way that texts are balanced and the way that kids are interacting with different types of texts? Are we ensuring that those are organized across reports and it's very clear for the end user? We have a diverse set of educators, and review team members have not used the curriculum they're reviewing, and that's something that that's absolutely key, that everybody who's coming to this work, we want to make sure that they're looking at it very objectively. So they're not coming in and saying, oh, well, this is what we use in where I'm from. So that's where they start. You can go forward. Thanks. The review process itself is fairly robust and organized. As I mentioned, they're looking at the whole of the curriculum. This is a very common question. We're not doing a dipstick. We're looking at everything that counts in a core package. So review teams participate in training. It's typically a face-to-face training where we walk them through the protocols, we talk about the standards. We also provide other sorts of PD opportunities and extra training for people who ask for that. So people in our group may say, I would like to know more about this, and we connect them them with places to get that extra support. They participate in a publisher orientation for their assigned review, which is really important. So the people who are doing the development of the materials need to have that opportunity to cue the reviewers. Here's what our program does. Here's where you might find these components, and they have this opportunity to work with them directly. Reviewers examine the instructional materials independently. They get, as I mentioned, they get the materials on their own. They get the materials on their own, and they work they work in different parts of the country, and so they work individually. They meet once a week virtually together on a WebEx, where they're looking at each other through the screen. And in these weekly meetings, they're sharing evidence, they're discussing what they found, they're discussing ratings, and they're talking through the tool and making decisions about what are the best pieces of evidence that represent the program. The majority of the work, after each meeting, the majority of the work is done independently, but we have found that our review teams do frequently get on the phone with each other. They're constantly connected through the review process. The reviewers, the amount of time that it takes, they take for the language arts program so far between 5 and 10 hours a week once they actually begin the review, because they're looking deeply at everything. They're looking at all the text. They're taking everything into consideration. The team leads are working with them constantly to be crafting and putting all of this evidence into the reports. And the team leads actually meet independently of their groups to work with the other team leads and the other calibrators weekly to ensure that we have that consistency, and then also to finalize evidence and scores. Another note in here is if there's a big question, or if there's something that we have we can't find something, or the reviewers have a specific question that we can't internally answer, we do really value that relationship with our publishers and our developers, because we'll turn back and ask them. Like, the reviewers will say, we think that this is what this means, but we need some clarification. And at that point, we do lean back and connect with the publisher to make sure that we have this conversation happening, so that our reviews are accurate and really representing that quality. With us also today, we have Maya Lars, and Maya was one of our reviewers this year. Maya, could you talk a little bit about your experiences in this inaugural review process this year?
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. So first and foremost, I would like to thank you, Lisa, for giving me the great opportunity to participate in this absolutely necessary and impactful work. It was an enjoyable experience, and it really was some great things happening. I got to meet my team first face-to-face, and we participated in many trainings around the process. And at the outset of the review, when we were sent the materials, we were given time to get acclimated to the process. We were able to attend a publisher's orientation, which allowed us, to really thoroughly review the materials on our own. We met virtually weekly, and we had really great discussions. We had calibrations that included great discussions around our evidence collection, the indicators, and the standards. And like Lisa said, in between meetings, we would independently review the materials, collecting evidence to corroborate our ratings per indicator, which ultimately produced the reports and the overall alignment and usability ratings that you have now. So it was a really great experience.
Thanks, Maya. And would you say, when you did it, would you say that the time that I gave is accurate?
Yes, I would. Okay. Yes, I would. In between, when we independently reviewed the materials, it took about, on average, 4 to 6 hours to really examine and take a close look at the materials and the indicators to kind of determine and rate the alignment. So yes, we spent enough time that we actually became one with the materials. We actually saw the materials in our sleep.
Right. And so 5 to 10 hours per week, but over the course of 6 months. So certainly we know, since you actually have a day job working with children and teachers, how important that is and your time is, and can't thank you enough for giving it to us.
It was my pleasure.
Thanks, Maya. So if we go forward, we'll show the products, and we'll dig into what we actually did. So our inaugural reviews are listed here, and we initially started to think about. We're always thinking about things like, what are people using across the country? You know, what are the market share? What are the different ways that people are engaging with stuff? But for our inaugural review, we knew that we just wanted to start. We had to start somewhere, and so we grabbed. We worked with some materials that are in use in a lot of places from some larger publishers. We also knew that we wanted to get some smaller programs that were out there we have one that's an OER. We wanted to make sure that we kind of got the flavor just to get this review process going. Thinking that over time we want to review as many things as possible, especially as people continue to write in and ask us to. So you'll see that our inaugural reviews in the top. We did Amplify ELA, Springboard ELA for 6, 7, and 8. We did Comprehensive Reading Solutions Bookworms, which is an OER for grades 3, 4, and 5. Expeditionary Learning for 6, 7, and 8, and Collections 2015 for grades 6, 7, and 8. And then we reviewed Reading Street and ReadyGen, which are both from Pearson. And again, just to reiterate, we are interested in looking at what people are actually using, and we're trying to provide a service that is of value. And so some of these things are created pre-Common Core, but they're in use and continue to be bought. Other things are brand new. And so we're really thinking and trying to respond to the field. The things that are on the bottom says in the pipeline, those are reports that are due soon, that are being finished up. We just received the materials later than the others, so they began later. Our summary of alignment findings, and again, I keep saying 7 does not make a trend, but of the 7 that we reviewed, 3 fully met our criteria for alignment and usability. And what that should indicate to you is that they met the expectations of criteria in gateways 1, 2, and 3. Those 3 are Expeditionary Learning for grades 6, 7, and 8, Amplifies ELA, and ReadyGen, and the grades are listed there. 3 partially met our criteria for alignment, meaning that they either met or partially met the expectations of Gateway 1 and/or Gateway 2. So those 3 are Collections 2015, Springboard, and both of those are grades 6, 7, and 8, and Bookworms, which is grades 3, 4, and 5. One program did not meet our criteria for alignment, and that's the Reading Street program for grades 3, 4, 5, and 6. And so when you look at the reports, because of the gateway system, that means that the review process stopped at that gateway. So there's only a Gateway 1 report for Reading Street. So we'll do a little website tour here. Okay. So Christina's going to pop the website up, and we're just going to do a little drive around. And again, you can feel free to call or email, and we're happy to provide you more support. Our website has a lot of different functions and features, and so we want to make sure that you can see some of the things that are new if you're a returner, or if you're not a returner. If you look on the top, you've got the list on the top that shows the different materials. Christina, if you just pop to the View ELA reports first. And if you look at the View ELA reports, you'll see here, you can see the covers of the books, and you can see just generally what's there. And what's always here are things that are completed. If you go to the compare function, if you hit the compare, there you go. We have different tools based on what we know people are asking for. We're really trying to support usability. So you can compare by gateway. So again, that text quality and just the presence of great tasks and questions is that Gateway 1. So what you see here is essentially comparing programs just on that gateway, on that text quality, and on those components. And we don't have, again, we only have 7 so far, but over time, this will be much more robust. You can see, and then you can see that there are different, if you switch the compare to The second, you get Gateway 2. And then there's the usability as well. So that's just the big broad overview. But what's really interesting is actually looking at the evidence. So Christina, if you could go to, go into report, fabulous. On the top of each series, there's an overview summary of alignment and usability that just gives you a thumbnail of what the program, how the program did on our tool. And then there are some graphics to represent that as well. And again, this is just sort of the introduction to the report itself. But what's really valuable is when you actually get into a grade level and you can see the detail inside. So Christina, like 4th grade is a great place to click. Great. So this is Bookworms grade 4, and you'll see on the left you've got the little thermometer that's kind of showing you how the points fell out overall. You've got an alignment paragraph on top. And then as Christina just kind of scrolls down, she's just going to scroll through this, you'll see that the report is really detailed. So what Maya was referencing before about the amount of time and how they really got to know the materials, the specificity inside the reports include titles, include actual questions and tasks. They list them out and show you what kinds of questions and tasks and assignments are available, what kinds of assessment items are available, and they get very specific. And they also will include different prose that's included in the materials as it's relevant to the indicators. Some of the indicators have a deeper level of specificity because we know that people are looking for them. Like, for example, the indicator around the language standards, people want to know, well, what are those grammar questions? Other levels or other indicator reports might just be a paragraph or two. But again, what we wanted to cue your eye to is that you can really unpack what the program is doing, what it's doing for kids, and they're written in a way that the end user can consume them with ease. So you should be able to read these if you're a parent, you should be able to read as a school board member, teachers should be able to identify what the program's doing and how it's going to work for their kids. So Christina, would you go up to the About section when you get back up there? One big question that we get a lot is people just want to know about the approach that we take. In our approach, if you click in there, you have access to all of our methodology, our tools, and the evidence guides that our teachers use. So those are downloadable. You can see the rubrics, you can see the research, and you can see all of the ways, the conversation, discussion prompts that they use. Also, while I'm here, I will just remind everybody that there in the About section, we do include a section that identifies our team, and we have our teachers across the country highlighted here in the content review team. And we just wanted to share this to honor the fact that the work can't be done without these amazing folks across the country, and they're listed. And finally, in this drive around, if you go up into news and views, you can see where we post our newsletters and our educator blogs. And you can also get our upcoming, what's on deck, what are the next things that we're going to be reviewing, and all of this is updated and available pretty consistently. So we encourage you to come back and check it out. Let us know what you think, and if you have any questions, then we can definitely work with you and get you what you need in your own setting. If you go back to the slide deck. So the last little piece here is that just our initial observations, because folks ask, what did you find in your 7? One, we found that of the 7, the text quality complexity were mostly at grade level, and that was really interesting to us. And so that was an observation. Another one was that alignment to speaking and listening standards is uneven across programs. That continues to be something that people ask about. And then third, the way that materials addressed at building knowledge and working across content and integrating standards, that continues to be something that varies across programs. And so as we go forward into the fall and during our next set of reviews, we're really looking forward to seeing if this continues or if we find out new things.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. We want to talk a little bit and draw upon some of our panelists who have been utilizing and have great hopes for utilizing these reports in their districts and states. Again, we go through and put the detail and evidence that sometimes you don't find in various adoption reports or other sorts of things to really help teachers think, not just about purchasing the materials. That's critical, and we know that happens rarely. That it is usually once something is adopted, that it'll be at least a 5 to 7 year period, if not longer, before materials are purchased again. And we know that by providing this kind of evidence, we can help folks really winnow choices, et cetera. And that choice will affect the type of PD that teachers get and need to implement the curriculum. It'll help inform assessment strategies. These materials will help shape how professional learning communities are organized and the team time, and ultimately influence how parents can engage with their students at home doing work. So it is a critical decision, and again, one we've already discussed in the research, makes a big difference ultimately for student learning. So if you're adopting, we hope at the beginning of the adoption process, we understand that we're a little late to the party, so to speak. We wish we had launched and started long ago, but we hope and know we're at the beginning of adoption processes for many districts out there. We hope these reports can really be used to help winnow the list of materials by really going in and digging into the evidence, reflecting on the capacity of school and district teaching core, their strengths, their needs, that ultimately it will help them sift through and think about the kinds of materials they want to pilot and get to know. And we hope this is useful during that stage and that we're saving time by having this great group of national educators review things that often had been left to local districts if looked at all. We also hope by providing that evidence that these reports are helpful if you already have adopted and you are using or adapting materials. It can certainly help for planning professional development, really reflecting on where materials may need to be bolstered, and as teachers so often supplement whatever materials are being utilized in their school and district, that this can help guide some areas that can really be filled to help ensure that the full intent of the standards is met. Stephen, we know you had looked at our math reports, and that helped draw you to us, and we were able to capture your expertise around ELA. Would you like to talk more about that process and what it was like in your district in North Carolina?
Sure. Can you hear me?
We can.
Great. I'd like to echo what Maya said, just about being very appreciative of the opportunity to be a part of this wonderful, powerful work. And, you know, I recently retired from a 30-year career in my county, Rutherford County, North Carolina. Worked, like Lisa did, for about 10 years as a classroom teacher. And then I also worked for about 10 years as a school-based administrator, assistant principal and principal. And then the last 10 years I spent as the director of elementary education for our district, and worked with our elementary schools and our teachers and administrators, and always trying to have the very best materials that we possibly could. And of course, we had a lot of challenges to ensure that that was always the case. And one of the biggest ones that I ever encountered in my career was when we implemented the Common Core state standards. It was a great opportunity, but also a challenge to ensure that our teachers had what they needed. Our first focus in our district was on ELA, and so we basically took what we had in math, and you know, I just say we put Band-Aids on it. We tried to make it the best that it could be until we could adopt some new materials. And then we were very excited when we did get to to the time where we could adopt some new math materials, because we knew we definitely needed that. And we wanted to, like you mentioned, you're impacting children for many years when you make these decisions, because with limited resources, we certainly can't make purchases of that magnitude that often. So we wanted to ensure that we spent our money well. So we undertook the process in our district of putting together teacher teams, administrator teams, using our instructional support staff as best we could, our instructional coaches, to use rubrics, tools, resources that were out there to help us review what was available. And we did what we thought was a good process in our district. It was before the EdReports reviews were released. As you said, maybe late to the party, but better late than never, Eric. So I'm just happy that this work is there now for folks. So, but we did select a program that we felt was the best aligned thing out there. What really excited us was that when the EdReports reports were released, it validated what we had done. Of course, it went much deeper. When Lisa was reviewing those reports, you can see the wonderful detail that's provided in the reports. That is the product of all those many hours that Maya mentioned. And we, of course, could not go to that level with our review, and we were very thrilled to see that the more detailed reports and the more detailed review did validate what we had chosen. So it was a way to reinforce what we had done, and also to, it was something I shared with all of our teachers and administrators when the reports came out, because it had been a tough implementation process for us. It was new, it was challenging, but we were starting to see the fruits of our labors, and the review showing that we were using something that was so well aligned to the standards just really invigorated our teachers, energized them to see that they were using materials that were very well aligned to the standards. They were finding that, of course, in their practice, which is what we do when we implement materials. A lot of times we buy things based on what publishers tell us and what anecdotally we learn from other districts who may have implemented. But we often find when we get deeply into those materials in our classrooms that they aren't what we've hoped they had to be. So teachers have to spend lots of time supplementing those materials. So the reports are just a fantastic resource, I think, that will prevent a lot of that from happening, so that teachers can really focus on differentiating their instruction in their classrooms, deepening their instructional methods, rather than trying to spend time on materials. So I'm just very excited, as you can probably tell, about this resource that has not been there, that has been very needed for many years. And as a career educator, I just am very excited for those who now have an opportunity to use these reports, because not only are they good for selecting materials, but they generate wonderful conversations among teachers, and they're actually a great foundation for professional development as we dig deeper into the standards.
Thanks so much, Stephen. And Morgan, as a proud public school graduate of some Maine public schools, I know the kind of work you have cut out for you at the department as you help district schools and teachers reflect on instructional materials and really think about what they're utilizing. We've kind of worked with our educators to create this information for folks like you and your compatriots at districts and schools. What do you think? And hopefully it'll be helpful to you.
Well, I'll tell you, I would like to echo something that Lisa mentioned earlier, and that's as working at the State Department of Education, I am constantly asked to weigh in on materials, and that's something that I can't do. Maine does not have a statewide curriculum. We are not a textbook adoption state. And so my hands are tied as far as making any kinds of comments. And so it's been a great help. What I can do is help people reflect on the process for how they look at potential materials. And what I see happening now is that we're far enough and maybe deep enough into the process of implementing the Common Core state standards that we're identifying some areas of need, areas of weakness. And so, of course, the minute that the EdReports document came out, I sent it right out to my listserv and immediately got some very positive feedback from some districts that are looking to make some changes. One of the things is your reports are detailed enough to answer some of those questions, when they're saying, geez, we keep seeing this evidence that our students aren't doing well with X and Y, I just don't understand how that can possibly be. There's an awareness now of, oh, look, well, that's because this evaluation indicated maybe this isn't missing or this is a weaker area in the materials that we're relying on. And so it's an opportunity. I have to echo Stephen. It's an opportunity to really focus on the professional development. Now, instead of getting hung up on whether, you know, do we buy this, do we buy that, we look at what are the instructional needs and what can we do to really focus on the integrity of the implementation and the use of these materials. Now we can talk about words like fidelity with confidence. You know, why do you want to use materials with fidelity? Well, because now we have something that is objective to back it up. I also have to say that I've encouraged people to take a look at the process that EdReports uses to evaluate resource materials and just do some of their own professional learning around why this particular process, why does that process reflect integrity and a reason to trust these reports. And that in itself is very valuable, PD, to look at the process. So I'm excited. I look forward to seeing more more resources reviewed. I really look forward to the high school piece as well, just so you know.
Well, which, Morgan, you couldn't have given us a better transition, and thank you, to what comes next. And this actually answers a couple of questions that have come in during the webinar, which is, why 3-8? What happened to K2, let alone our plans for high school? So, Lisa, would you like to share our next steps besides hitting more 3-8 ELA products?
Sure. I'll just briefly show you the projected timeline. So we're continuing to motor through the 3-8 reviews, and we have teams up and running, working on a lot of these things. We're also diving into K2. And so this fall, we're doing our initial set of K2 reviews, and then we're beginning to think about high school, Morgan, so just be ready for that phone call. And we're conducting our listening tour to get that tool figured out. And we figure that we'll be doing reviews of those materials beginning in the spring of 2017. So again, if you have further questions or you would want some more specificity, just feel free to call or email, and we can talk through what the details are.
Great. And lastly, again, we are so appreciative of your time, and there are multiple ways that you can get involved in our work. So, first of all, if you are a K-12 ELA educator or math educator, since those are the areas we're reviewing in now, we hope you'll apply to join our review team. As Lisa mentioned, we had over 600 applicants for our ELA positions as we picked through our 45. We know it's a great professional learning opportunity, as both Maya and Stephen alluded to, if not a lot of time. So we're glad there's some learning that goes along with a lot of that time, and we do compensate our reviewers. We value our educators' time so much. If you are using any of the ELA materials we've reviewed or math materials, if you're at the elementary level and teaching both, on the website, you'll see for each report and grade level that you can click on and register to share your comments as a teacher. It would be great to share with your peers, how have these materials worked for you? What have you learned? What would you recommend to your colleagues to help supplement the thorough reviews we've looked at around alignment, and to really help around some of the usability issues, particularly if we didn't review that gateway, given what we found in gateways 1 and 2. And of course, the easiest way to get involved is to share. You can see through social media, through sending the reports by email. There are multiple ways to get these reviews in your colleagues' hands if they're utilizing any of these materials or whether or if a district is considering them. So we have just a few minutes left. Lisa, we have one question that's come in that is pretty germane to the high school conversation, and it's asking about social studies and science and looking at literacy across the full courses. I can answer the question about whether we're going to be reviewing social studies and science, and at this point we don't have plans to review immediately in either of those areas. But if you'd like to share, or Molly as well, the ELA focus and the need to look across multiple subjects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, briefly, if you're asking that question, then I'm definitely going to be calling you for our listening tour, first of all, because that is a great question. For grades 6 through 12, we know that the standards call out something a little bit differently. And so what we're looking at are the language arts materials, and we're going to be working with different educators across the country to hammer out what might that look like in different programs. So we will be coming up with some definitions and methodology, again, thinking with our partners in the states and with our partners in different groups who do different kinds of reviews to get that specific. But we will be focusing on materials that are language arts first.
And then I would just add, this is Molly Branson-Thayer, there are really great standards guiding science and social studies right now that are, firmly based in research and would make this process completely doable. So it's a great place to move toward. And as we all as educators think about integrating across content areas, it's a valuable next step.
Fantastic. Thank you both. We are about at our witching hour, so I'd like to, again, thank you, Morgan, Stephen, Maya, and Molly for joining Lisa and I, and all of the guidance and expertise you've shared with us to make these inaugural reports as helpful as we believe they are for the field. You can see an email address below, communications@edreports.org. If you have any questions, feedback, thoughts, anything to share in terms of how you've utilized our reports, as you can imagine, as a group that is working with educators, we are a learning organization and want to continue to improve what we do, and we'd love to hear from you. And there's an email below. And please come to the website. We are going to be listing our next round of materials under review for K2 as well as 3-8 in the next couple of weeks as we confirm all of our titles. And again, don't hesitate if you have any questions, and thank you.